car keeps bending upper control arms. So in this video, we're gonna go over how to make an E36 upper work. Because it's steel and it's more straight, so that's more strong than a curvy piece of cast aluminum. The other thing is that there's some clearance issues. I'm gonna make a video about how I'm gonna try to make that work, because it currently won't. So the root of the problem is that the CVs were hitting there and there, and that's not normal. So I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. Put that one the wrong way. So it's definitely not right. E36 control arms bolt right in, however they hit right here, which means we don't have enough up travel anymore. So we're gonna make that work. There should be enough room. If I go in there, that actually goes up pretty high. I should be able to cut that out, and then I'm gonna add a plate up here to keep the car hopefully as rigid as it was right there. For test purposes, I put my less bent other one over here and kind of saw where I was at. I need to get like another 1.25 inches, 1.125 inches, whatever out of the other side to make it match what this one can do. And this is firmly bottomed out on the shock, which that part's adjustable, but I kind of like how high it can go up because it works well with the ride height I have. Just to show how deep this goes. I mean, it's way up in there. I marked where the control arm, you know, marks where it would clear the control arm, and we only need like 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches more upper travel. As you see here, we can go, I don't want to go all the way, but we can easily do like 1.5 inches there, just so they're 1.5 inches there. So maybe I'll start out conservative and just take like 1 inch out, maybe out of the back, out of the deepest part, and then on the front part it actually doesn't hit, so I'll take less. I'll taper it down maybe to like, oh, say ¾ of an inch. So I'll just kind of taper it down so I'm not getting way into anything. Then we'll test it out, see if it gets where we want to be, because taking a certain amount out of here should actually change what happens out here more because of geometry and math and things, because the distance between here and here, stuff I understand but I could never calculate. So on second thought, the metal from the car kind of cups down here a little bit, and I'd really like to minimize how much I'm into there. Now the nice thing is that gives me some clearance anyway, so I tried to do about 1/2 inch to start, and I just kind of traced along, and after we get that cut out, we're going to bolt the wheel on and see how close we are to the other side with the less bent old upper control arm that gives us gobs of clearance. First experimental cut out of the way, and we are way closer. Looking under here, we're actually pretty close to just hitting the car anyway, so I can't go much further. I still think this is going to work. One thing I'm going to really have to watch out for when I do the E36 sway bar is there's some fuel lines there, and the nut hole is like right there, so I have to make extra sure to cycle this with no spring, no shock, with the sway bar attached, and make sure, or at least the bracket attached, to make sure the bolt doesn't hit. So since I don't want to get too into anything, I know that that's the only part left hitting. I know there's an opening down here I got to fill in with a plate too, so I'm probably going to grind that more towards this when I do it, so I can kind of have a plate kind of doing that without losing the clearance I gained. Undercoating is going to get ground off, and we're going to make a piece that kind of goes over this and makes the car stronger than it ever was, to make up for the material that's been removed. Taper that up because of the direction the control arm's going to go, and I kind of brought all this other stuff up a little more because I actually do need a little extra room because I'm going to be trying to weld that back shut, and then of course up here there's going to be some kind of plate to put in there. So I think I still have some more grinding to do, and I got some undercoating off while I was down there because why not. And it's not too bad for a first try at giving it extra clearance. Let's put the wheel on, see how it looks. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. See how the bottom is looking? It's like straight up touching with the very bottom of the car. So I guess if I bottom out really hard, I might hear that. But if we look on the other side, where it's firmly bottomed out on the shock, we're not even much further. The nice thing is, with the bushing on the subframe end and the ball joint over here, it has a little bit of twist, and it might not sit quite like that with the coil in it anyway, which might give us some more clearance. Let's take a look at fully compressed with the tire off. Also, by the way, barely tucks wheel over there, and we're talking like basically 1/8 of an inch that is not tucking wheel, and it's rubbing so hard like this anyway. And I have run this tire size with this exact wheel on the back of this car. Works fine, so I guarantee it's not going further than that. So I think we're in business. So we're hitting here still, barely there, and underneath it's basically on the car, but we're still going to just give it a little extra because I need to put another plate below there. So I kind of mark off where it's hitting, and then I mark that spot too because it's getting a little close, and then kind of round up the rest. Up a little more. So again, little plate will go there. This will all just be stitch welded up to hopefully make it as strong or stronger than it ever was. I'm going to pick that up. It hits further back, which gives me the space for the plate to be. And you're virtually as stuffed as we are on the other side. And it's so close to the same. I'm going to call that good enough. It's actually touching up there, but I mean, I think I can make this work. Make sure we still have clearance above the sway bar thing, and we do. Just have to be really, really careful what goes up there. Maybe move the fuel line over if I have to. And then on these, I might actually add another bump stop in here, just to give it a little more something before it bottoms out on there. I'm not opposed to raising the car if I have to. I just want it to be functional as a drift car. Looks are nice, but I really just want it to work. I've used the cardboard template from the other side, just flipped around the other way to see where I need to trace out. Popped it up, verified it looked right. Chopping this side should be a lot quicker than the other side. Apologies for not filming while I was installing these plates. You want to kind of wrap these around while they're hot, so I was in the heat of the moment, as they might say. So I first started to try to weld it here and fold it around, but it didn't line up, so I had to basically grind and cut it off and start over. And luckily I didn't fold it too much to keep going. So I ended up lining this part up with the ridge that I made there and kind of worked my way over, and then this kind of had to pull down too. I didn't weld down there on purpose because there's no contact there and I didn't want to spread the gap, so now like water can go through and drain out, and that kind of goes for like anywhere on here. It could in theory go somewhere instead of accumulating and rusting out the car. So I think and I hope it's gonna work. And here's the other side in case you want to see it. To add these pieces here on each side, I kind of had to eyeball curve them over on the vise with a hammer, and then got them to where it kind of fit, and then I'd start welding it, and while it was hot I would just pound it into place and just kind of worked my way through, kind of to grind the edges and stuff a little as I went. And it was a process, but it worked and it should be strong. The bump stops need to change. One thing is, this is an adjustable strut or shock, whatever you want to call it, and I could just lengthen that and change where it bumps so it won't hit metal. As you can see, the notch does a lot, but because the coil mount in an E46 cups in, and on an E36 it's like flat up there, I'm kind of working with what I'm working with. I'm running into the floor of the car, so it's just, that's as much as we're going to do. Now if I just lengthen this to make it not bottom out here, what's going to happen is when I go full droop, the coil is going to want to come unseated. So I'm going to sacrifice just a little bit of up travel, which was kind of the plan anyway, and the tires rub so bad anyway when it's at full bump, so it doesn't really matter. So I have it at full bump now, where it's just about to hit metal. I can measure from the base of the shock to up there, which is just over 2 inches. I checked it out earlier. You can see good enough there. You know, and I have a secret weapon for that. So the secret sauce I have for this is some bump stops that I have sourced from some kind of Jeep lift kit a friend of mine gave me. And I believe that they're polyurethane because they feel like it, and I've not conducted the science to verify that, but we're going to go with that. Obviously these are much more than a little over 2 inches, but I was checking them out, and it does, there's on the Jeep they're supposed to go into the bump stop mount like the factory ones, and then they're just longer and stiffer and not worn out like what comes out or whatever. So if I cut it around this little indentation, I'm around right about 2 inches from there to the base of here, and it's a little over 2 inches, so it's actually nice that that kind of cups a little bit, because when it does impact and get close to the bottom, it'll give me just that little bit of squish. But with a lot of my wheel and tire fitment, it's already hitting tire in the fender anyway, except for when I'm running my 16s, which is actually pretty often. So we're going to try that. And then the other thing is the hole is probably a little bit too small for the strut shaft on there, so that will, you know, shouldn't be a big deal to drill out. So I'm going to very carefully try to cut this, and then I have to disassemble the top piece of my strut and put it in there, test fit it again, and see where we're at. To get a better look at this, there's a little domey part that's going to stick up past that roughly 2 inches. There's the part where it's supposed to go into the Jeep thingy. So here you can kind of see it. Now if all this works in the end, it doesn't have to be done with a Jeep bump stop. This is just what I happen to find. And as I'm measuring this a little further away from the vehicle, I'm going to give it just a little bit more meat over there to error safe, and I can remove material later. And I have another 2 of these to mess with just in case. tip. All you got to do to get these apart is very carefully loosen that little thing, which I already did. Do not turn the knob because you'll change your damping settings and all that science. Now you're exposed up there, and give it a quick little blip of a healthy impact. And I always keep these things in order. Moment of truth to see if this will clear. It will. Oh, it works. Look at that. So I'm going to put it with the little dome thingy up so it impacts the bottom of this with that. Because I don't know, it seems like a good idea to me. Because it's going to sit down there anyway. Let it sit solid on the more sensitive part. So that's my plan. We're close enough to the measurement we wanted. And the dust boot doesn't really work anymore. So don't know if that did much anyway. I might have a plan B up my sleeve. Our mock-up's going. And I have enough pressure on here that that's kind of mushroomed out a little bit. So much pressure, in fact, that it's not really sitting on that jack stand. But very, very carefully, because I wanted to simulate a hard impact. So it's barely not touching there, and I don't want it to touch. That's the whole point. So, and again, changing the height on this is great for changing where the spring sits for different ride heights and everything like that. But if I do that too much with a similar height that I was running, then the spring's just going to want to come out. And even if I ran it taller and wanted to do that, the spring's going to have its range of motion, and you know, it's still going to want to come up and bottom out. So that's kind of my theory. So unless I make it really, really tall. So I want to keep it a similar height. Everything's going to be great. A lot of rambling there. I think this is the right solution. And if you don't think so, you can feel that way. You can tell me about it if you really want to. And next fiasco is the sway bar, which I think will work. Okay, everything's back in place. There was a concern about the fuel line and the nut for the sway bar, and that has been resolved with one little zip tie that kind of gently pulls that over. And I made sure not to let the plastic fuel lines rub against that metal brake line, so there's just a little slack there. But now when it goes up at full bump, it's not even anywhere near it. Plus it was going to clear anyway. Gives it a little extra. These sway bar links are pretty iffy, and the upper part, I'm actually using one from the front of an E36 because that's what I was able to find at the time. I'm going to order or find or whatever the rear ones, because they'll bring that up just a little more, it looks like, from the pictures, because that's really close. And I might make my own little adjustable links or something, because those are a little angry where they sit, but they might work. We will see. And I guess this does get a little wider as it compresses, so maybe it'll be all right. So all in all, we're ready to test drive it, fine-tune the ride height, take it to the track and rip it. I've also extended these just a little tiny bit, because where I set the coils for now, I was able to, and they're still kind of pretty much in there, but you can wiggle them just a little bit. But that just gives it that little bit of extra clearance, so it won't be like ever tapping there with this thing going on. Dust boots, in theory they're a good idea, but I don't know how much they really helped anyway. I might put something on there eventually, but we will see. So everything worked great on the car. This is of course taken after the event. Sway bar lengths, I just got the E36 ones bent, a little retainer tab turned 90 degrees. They worked perfect. Still not 100% happy with the angle of the links, but worked fine. I couldn't even tell anything was bottoming out. Everything was working flawlessly. Broke the front of the car though. Thanks for watching. More on that part later. control arms are a complete success. Front, not so much. No fault to the condor. Just a Del 5 replacement. Ball joints didn't so much hold up.